Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where aspiring and experienced matchmakers come to sharpen their skills, grow their businesses, and elevate the matchmaking industry. Your host is Arlene Washburn, an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and industry innovator. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where we support aspiring and experienced matchmakers in building ethical, sustainable, and soul-aligned businesses that change lives, starting with their own. And today's episode is deeply personal to me. I'm joined by someone who helped me uncover a truth I had long buried, that even when your mind is strong and your mission is clear, your body and soul can still be screaming for help. Our guest, London Wollberg, is founder of Wake In. I love that title. He is a spiritual wellness leader and burnout recovery mentor. Jamie helps mission-driven leaders to figure out how to reconnect with their wholeness through self-love audit and examines the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies. I experienced this process firsthand, and let me tell you, it cracked something wide open for me. And today we're talking about the hidden burnout matchmakers face, and frankly, everyone, and especially leaders and people who are running businesses, and what it's doing to our health, our businesses, and our relationships, and how we can start healing from the inside out. Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Namaste, Arlene. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored and excited to be here to talk about something that is also deeply personal to me, which is how we got here. And I am so fascinated by matchmaking. So let's get to it.
I love it. And, I guess I always used to say I have a real high tolerance for pain because I think my mind and body were not ever really connected. And I think a lot of people, I don't know, somehow get there for various reasons. It could be maybe someone was molested right here when they're young and they disconnect their brain from their body going forward. And it took me a long time to figure out how the body has a memory, not just the memory that is in your head. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are about that.
It's 1000% true. There are so many different ways that we can find ourselves disconnected. For me, for example, I also have sexual, emotional, medical traumas, as well as I am transgender, non-binary, and I'm autistic. So many different layers for me in terms of not feeling connected in my body. And that is a constant practice because my belief is that we are soul beings that are now human beings. And so the physical soul that is in this vessel has to navigate the physical, the mental, the emotional, and spiritual world. And when this is not in alignment and not balanced, not only can we not feel connected to our authentic self, something that is not exactly catered to by the programming at large in society that the majority of us have had, it also brings us into a space where we don't have a proper connection with ourself. And from that disconnection, we become out of balance and burned out.
I could just listen to you speak all day long. I remember we had our 1 hour session, which I went back and listened to, which was amazing. I love the way you express yourself. And, we're talking about burnout, which is such a common thing. And I can so relate to that right now. It's just the story of my life in general, because I put so much on my calendar. But now, with the added pressures of I have a 93-year-old mom who moved in with me, and she was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but early stage at 93. So that's not so bad. But it's so tough because I'm juggling 3 businesses. I have a household, a husband, my mother, grandson, all this stuff. And I've been the type of person who doesn't know how to say help. Like, I just feel like I'm Wonder Woman. And actually, people who act like that, I've come to learn, because I have a lot of colleagues with a similar personality, where your family thinks that you're Superwoman because you never asked for help. So they don't even bother, to offer it. And so burnout is my middle name. What are your thoughts about this? Because I just worry that so many people are going through this right now. And, like, what do you see as a common sign of burnout among service providers, entrepreneurs, leaders, people who are helping others, especially in love and relationships and all kinds of industries?
Oh, well, there's so much there. First of all, burnout is really an additional pandemic. This has been plaguing humanity for pretty much at least since the industrial age, and certainly since the tech boom. I was born in '89 for context, so right at the start of the internet. So burnout has always been around. What happened was that we had the pandemic around coronavirus. And the next thing we know, everyone starts to become aware of their actions, of their environment, of what's happening, not just for themselves, but for those around them. And there was a very healthy beginning to reevaluate our lives, reevaluate who we are and how we're showing up. People started to ask themselves if they were happy, for many people, for the first time. And so what happened was that burnout became to be unraveled and unveiled. And this is something that I believe that virtually every person on this planet has experienced at one point or another. And burnout is really not just about, oh, I'm having an off day, or oh, I'm feeling exhausted, which is one of the primary experiences that happens. It's something that has longevity to it. So by the time you're burned out, it's already wee 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 alarm system, like your whole being is screaming at you by the time you're burned out. So that off day, which anyone can have an off day, anyone can get angry or triggered or have a traumatic experience. It's about the spiral, that domino effect. And so a lot of what happens is we get closed in to our world, and we get unraveled and unbalanced in the massive areas of our life. And this is because, again, we're not balanced in our physical body, what's happening in the physical meat suit, our mental body, our thinking, our process. Anytime you say, I think, or the way that you're processing that overthinking, the emotional body, anything I feel, anything within the heart space, and the spiritual body, our higher selves, our intuition, and all that is. And the more, major air quotes, whatever resonates with you, God, universe, spirit, Allah, whatever connection that connects us all together. And what happens is when this is not balanced within ourselves, we then not only fall apart within ourselves, we start to impact everyone and everything that we care about. And what's interesting, especially when it comes to matchmaking and those who are in relating or daters, is that if we do not have balance within ourselves, then we do not find balance in our foundational areas of our career and our purpose, in our health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and the way that we relate to the people in our world who are closest to us, right? We have the world and all that we're connected to, but we're not here to save everybody. We're here to rescue our own selves. And the biggest impact we have is on ourselves to impact the world, and then our inner world, our closest world. So our family, our nuclear family, our extended family, our closest friends and collaborators, and our clients. And so if we do not have this balance within ourselves, then this ravels out into others. And what happens is you have unbalanced people meeting unbalanced people. And simply burnout is, I don't feel well. Things in life don't feel well. And the way that this manifests is you do not show up as your best self. Personally and professionally, you cannot perform at your best. And when you do not perform at your best, you can't show up your best for your clients. And because matchmaking and being a dater is all about relating, this quite literally is about our intimacy with ourselves and how we relate to others. And what I do is support people in this process of recognizing where they're burned out, figuring out a process to get out of burnout, which is a sustainable self-care system. And then on that journey of rebalancing, we find a way to then reconnect, not only deepen our intimacy, our awareness within ourselves, also with others. And this not only makes you a better matchmaker because you are connected with yourself, you're serving at your best, it helps you to actually understand your clients and understand your clients and what they're going through. Because matchmaking is your career, your passion, your purpose, ostensibly, and that is a full-time job. when you're a dater, how much do we feel like that's a full-time job? I know I feel like it's a full-time job. It's overwhelming, especially in this digital age where things can feel either ultra personal with zero privacy or totally private and I'm hiding behind a screen. So the burnout is really paramount here. And if we do not address each of these different layers of how we're impacted, we cannot be the ultimate dater. We cannot be the ultimate matchmaker because we're then going to mirror and reflect and attract someone with the same challenges we're experiencing.
What would you say to the matchmaker who's listening and silently struggling with their body, their boundaries, and their burnout, but doesn't feel safe to talk about it? Because, when you're a service provider and a healer, if you will, I like to call it that. I think you have another name for it, leaders of love. But when you're in that category, you always feel like you need to be on, you need to be available, you need to help, you're there to serve, and you neglect yourself. And where would you tell these people to begin to start really getting congruent with their mind, body, and soul, and really start taking care, the proverbial put your mask on first, so that they can be better in the work that they're doing. And like you said, the dater is not selecting the wrong, you know, or attracting someone that is not in a good vibration, that's then going to have a tumultuous relationship with them. What would you say to these people? Where do we begin to solve this problem?
Always within the self.
Hmm.
It's about loving yourself unconditionally. What I want everyone to know is that you are not alone and you are not on an island. There are billions of us for a reason, and there are quite literally billions of us who are struggling with burnout because of what we're taught at home, what we're taught in society, all of this programming of doers. Now, it's amazing that human beings are able to do, to get passionate about something and to serve. We're all here to serve powerfully, and we all have our special sauce, our frequency of what that is and what excites us. And for you to do that, it requires you to actually deepen your intimacy with yourself and show up for yourself first. If your cup is not full, as we say, right, then you cannot overflow and support and serve into others. And I super resonate. As a service provider, as a healer, a leader of love, it can feel so scary to be vulnerable, especially if you are raised with vulnerability is bad, vulnerability is weakness, and that is something that is so incredibly common. The thing is that vulnerability is strength. And when you are vulnerable, when you are open and express this, then people can relate to you better because they can feel, oh, this person gets it.
Yeah.
Because if someone is going to pick a matchmaker, right, or any service provider, we're looking for someone who can relate with us, who gets it, right, who's been there. Because it's not enough to be pretty on paper.
Mm.
You want to connect with someone and say, I get it, and I know this person gets me. I'm not going to go, if I have a Toyota, I'm not going to go to a place that doesn't serve Toyotas. If I go to this engineer and they're like, well, I've never seen a Toyota in my life, why would you trust them? So if the reason people trust me to support them in burnout is because I'm open and honest about all the different areas of burnout and impact that that's had on my life, and that through my own journey, I have figured out how to get out of burnout and figured out the sustainable method. If I'm going to go to a matchmaker, I want to know that this matchmaker gets me. So, right? So I'm queer, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, I'm neurodivergent. I want to go to a matchmaker who gets that, who's not just going to put me with other daters who do not align with that, who are like, well, I don't like trans people. Well, that wouldn't be a good fit for me. Mm-hmm. So by you being open and vulnerable about what you're going through, you are actually going to become a magnet to those who are meant for you, who you are going to be the blessing on their door when you show up. It is not uncommon for people to come into a space with me and they just burst into tears because their first thing is, wow, Jamie, I've never met anybody who got it. I've never met someone who could hold a safe space. And as a matchmaker, you need to know very, very intimate details about your dater in the same way you need to know about the intimate details of your life in order to get yourself out of burnout. So the first thing is to focus on yourself and figure out what that means for you in order to help them.
And for people who haven't gone through the benefit of your process, when you say focus on yourself, I know what you're talking about because you asked me a series of questions that were focused on me and questions that people don't ask themselves. And you have a certain way about you and the way you talk and everything that just actually does hold a space, a non-judgmental, loving space for people to be clear, to be open, and to be vulnerable. And I agree with you that vulnerability uh, is really brave and strong and powerful. And so I was able to allow things to come out that subconsciously we sort of keep bottled up. But what would how do you explain to people what being with looking within yourself to really start to hone in on how to overcome this burnout that we're talking about, because a lot of people don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And it is true. A lot of people overthink the self-care aspect and what it is to know the self. So what it comes down to is actually connecting with yourself on all levels. I'll give an example. If someone is going to get ready for their day, your routine at the start of your day and your routine at the end of the day are key moments when you get to really be in touch with yourself. And a lot of it is simply being intentional, right? So, for example, me, I am a spiritual person. When I have my first drink of water, I sit, I'm a Reiki master as well. So I run Reiki, I pray, I send gratitude to the water, and I just sit quietly. I put on some soothing music. I put my phone away. I know, gasp. You've got to put your technology away sometimes, and really get quiet with myself. And I really somatically, meaning looking at the body and how I'm feeling across each aspect of who I am, I scan myself and I say, well, how am I feeling right now? If you have a headache, you know that you have a headache. Why? Because you feel pain. And you had a somatic experience where physically you felt pain in your head and you brought your attention and your awareness there. So these are things that we actually do automatically. And it's simply bringing in the awareness of, wow, I do this automatically, but what would happen if I actually did it intentionally? And so getting quiet with yourself, getting in touch with yourself, connected on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level is what's going to help you gain that awareness. So whether on a physical level, maybe you are exercising a lot. Maybe you like yoga or stretching. Maybe you like to get massages. Maybe you like to go for long walks. Maybe you like to do things like EFT tapping, where you're tapping parts of your body, or you're getting acupressure, right? Maybe when you're getting dressed, it's a matter of, okay, so I feel the clothing going over my head. I feel myself pulling my pants up, right? These feel silly. They might sound silly. Really, they're so much more powerful and simple than you realize. On a mental level, maybe you're a big journaler, right? The mental and emotional body especially connect massively. All of these are not separate. We separate them, major air quotes, to analyze and discern what is really going on at the core. Because whatever outburst you're having, whatever exhaustion you're feeling, whatever depression you're feeling, whatever anxiety you're feeling is not just that. It comes from somewhere. Something created that, like how you spoke to when someone is sexually molested or assaulted, and that disconnect that happens, and how that happens in many different ways. It does happen in many different ways. And it's about us reintroducing ourselves in a deeper way that we're not really used to. And the thing is, these are not new thoughts. These are things that our ancestors were doing for thousands of years across many different cultures. The same kind of messages were going on about meditation and caring for yourself and eating healthy foods, right? We know this now as we pay attention to the blue zones, these parts of the world where we have centenarians, and looking at how they live their life. How they live their life is being physically active in micro ways consistently, being social and experiencing joy, connecting with those they love, doing hobbies that they like, doing this consistently, right? There are different things that we know how to do. And so, as we are becoming more aware of these things, it's about putting it into place, creating a self care routine. And that does not mean my routine is I must go to the gym. I actually argue that a self care routine is not about what you have to do. It is what you desire to do that makes you feel at your best. So if you are someone who loves to shake it out and blast music that's really positive and upbeat and dance around your room for 10 minutes, if you are someone who needs to scream or squeeze into your pillow and you're like, this is what helps me to release. If you're someone who needs high activity and you're a HIIT trainer person, or you're someone who sets a timer for 15 minutes and you cry it out for 15 minutes and forget about it afterwards, and that's what you need to do to compartmentalize. Whatever it is, we have different things that work for each of us. And that's what we create in a routine. And whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, the consistency of this, even on a small level, creates a world of difference. But if you do not get in touch with yourself, if you do not find out how to release the judgment, to love yourself unconditionally, you cannot get out of burnout, you cannot get out of balance, and you cannot bring balance to yourself and to others. This is something that ripples off. You've got to start within and start small so you don't overwhelm yourself. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, so powerful. And, you just inspired me to go back to my morning routines that were like game changers in my life. I would wake up, I would have water because even though so it's so funny because you just said that, but there's so much science behind our bodies are made of water. So putting water in our system before coffee, before anything else, walking outside and looking at the sun is so important for your sleep patterns. It helps you I don't remember the technical side because this is more science, but it's just having that routine. And then I would do a meditation, a guided meditation, because not everybody can just sit there and meditate. So just do a guided meditation, and it doesn't matter what comes to your head and what thoughts come through. Let them come in and let them flow right out. But just doing that where you're sending love to the world and to everyone, you bring more peace into your life. And having a gratitude practice, having at least 3 things every day that you can be grateful for. And that really sets up your day. So I'm going to go back to that. I promise you, Jamie. I'm declaring it here on the Matchmaker Mentor podcast because I need that now more than ever. And that's the thing, is like when we get out of alignment and we have all this craziness going on in our lives, that's when we drop all the things that are actually beneficial to you, and you stop doing the things you really should be doing. And when we have these businesses that, when you own a business, you need to be self-propelled, you need to motivate yourself and come through for your clients and do good work. So how else are you going to bring that self-love in? And the question I have for you is, how do that word is used a lot, self love, right? What does that mean, and how do people bring that to themselves? Because it's like there's so many just statements that we make, sometimes as coaches or whatever, but I feel like I need concrete stuff for people to know, like, this is how you know implement self-love in your life, which is so important.
Yes. So self-love, you can look at it this way. The confusion that we have en masse in humanity is coming from conditional love versus unconditional love. And what we've actually been taught at large is conditional love. And conditional love is not so esoteric in terms of what it means, in the same way that unconditional love is not so esoteric in what it means. When we talk about conditional love, we're talking about conditions. When we love someone because XYZ, because of what they did for us, because of what they said to us, because of how they made us feel, because of what it meant. And the same way goes when someone doesn't give us those things, when someone says something that's hurtful to us. And this is also about what we say to ourselves, what we don't say to ourselves. If you have all this negative self-talk, then that is largely coming because you are setting expectations and you are creating a narrative of, I have to be this. And if I'm not, I failed. And that's not true. That's not actually what's real. Conditional love is what blocks us from feeling our belonging. It's what blocks us from remembering who we are, why we're here, and what it is that we're here to enjoy, as well as what it is we are to provide into this world. And so when we break ourselves out of these conditions, then we drop the expectations, we drop the judgments, and then what we have left is freedom at its purest form of unconditional love. I firmly believe that unconditional love is, all that ever was, and ever will be. Unconditional love is stripping away those conditions. This does not mean I have to approve of someone's behavior. It doesn't mean that you have to like them or like what they're doing or even agree with them. It's a clear understanding of, we're all adult babies, we're all humans trying to figure it out, trying to do our best with our own circumstances of what we have, and that we are divinely imperfect, perfect beings. And when we release the pressures we have on ourselves and we release the pressures that we have on others, all that is left is who we truly are, which is love, which is lovable, because all of you is lovable. All of you is worthy of loving. That is inherent. So what we are doing is peeling back these layers, these filters of all of these different have-tos and narratives that have come on for hundreds of years. And we're unpacking it. It's a social and emotional and psychosocial pandemic that we are all clearing out. So if we can come with grace for each other of, this is how things were, this is how things are, this is what we desire it to be, then we can all swim towards what we desire it to be. And we can start internally on a small level and create forgiveness. So these steps of going within and getting to unconditional love are going within and acknowledging where you are, who you are, and how you are being. That's why we're human beings. We are emotional beings and we are here to feel. But scientifically, we now know that emotions are really only felt super strongly for 30 seconds to 90 seconds. Everything else is the narrative we've told ourselves based on those conditions. Now, your conditions are not wrong. There's nothing wrong with you for the fact that you have created these conditions, because we all did. We all have. We've all created them based on the programming. This is part of the evolution of humanity. So now that we're gaining this awareness, we get to hold space for that. And when we practice, which it's a practice, our self-love, and we strip away these layers, whether it's talking nicely to ourselves in the mirror, whether it's listening to affirmations, whether it's going to therapy, whether it's going on a walk, whether it's having girl talk with your gal pal, whether it's talking to a parental figure, whether you're talking to your matchmaker mentor, whoever it is, we are not alone in this. And we are not the only ones experiencing it, which means that we all have time. We all have that beautiful, complex, illusionary construct of time at our fingertips. It's to our benefit to recognize both what is special and that we have all the time that we actually need to do what we are designed to do and to be who we are designed to be. So these steps are micro. And that's why I start with that self-love audit, because that allows us to do just that, go within.
That I had a colleague, I always quote her because she would say very insightful things, Dr. Aisha. And she says that, I believe it was her who said that you have value even when you're just laying on a bed doing nothing, because everyone, as to your point, is a human doing instead of a human being, and just being in itself has value. And those conditions start to arise from that, right? Because if you're not doing enough for someone or whatever, then everything's this conditional thing. It's so interesting. Let's talk a little bit about what we kind of already touched on it, but what can these matchmakers, these leaders, entrepreneurs really start to implement? So we talked about implementing gratitude practice, having a routine in the morning, how you set up your day, how you end your day. I think that's beautiful. And in the in between, I mean, I know I used to do some breath work, because especially when things were getting really and again, I'm being a hypocrite here, because now, thanks to you, Jamie, I am inspired to go back to being that spiritual person and doing all the things that I know should, I don't like to use the word should, I'll take that back. But the things that I know are going to help me cope with my day in the best possible way. What else? What are the things that you recommend so that people stay connected, mind, body, soul, and just deal with their days? Because we're busy, we're overwhelmed, we have a million things going on, we're trying to do the best we can. What else would you say?
Oh, that's a great question. Firstly, there are almost infinite tools to doing this, and everyone has the tools that excite them and that work for them. And some of that is about experience, right? I don't like to say trial and error. It's about, okay, I had this experience. Maybe I tried a particular meditation, and okay, I don't like this teacher's voice. Okay, so you don't like that teacher's voice. Good thing there are thousands and potentially hundreds of thousands of other teachers who
So
guide meditations, right? So what it really is focusing on those four bodies, right? And having a task for each of those four bodies, having an action. That's going to fulfill your doer mentality while engaging with all of who you are on a holistic level in your beingness. So physically, right, what is something I can do to balance and nourish my physical body? Do I have a green juice? Do I have a shake? Do I have water? Do I have a tea ceremony? Am I a cacao person? Do I need a double espresso intravenously? Kevin, yeah, me as well. After the water, trust me, it's the next thing. Uh,
right.
that happens. Do I physical movement, right? A lot of these things are things that we know, and it's we tell ourselves, well, I can't have this because I have to do this, that, and the other. And it's giving yourself the permission. What I love to say to people is remember that when you receive, we all receive. When you love yourself unconditionally, you can love others unconditionally. And when we all love unconditionally, we live in an unconditional world where suddenly our authentic selves and everything we truly desire in terms of how we serve and how we enjoy this humanity becomes possible. So figure out something for the physical body. Then the mental body. Again, maybe you're a journaler. Maybe you have someone that you connect with, your bestie, for 10 minutes at the start of your day, and you just process through and talk about what's going on. Maybe you get yourself into a therapy session. Maybe you psych yourself up with some sort of self-talk video, right? There are tons of coaches, mentors like myself putting out content continuously to excite us. Maybe you listen to that song that pumps you up and makes you feel super positive and good, or you go and do that mirror play, right? You go into that mirror and you look at yourself and you say, you are awesome, I am awesome, whichever of the perspectives that you take, that feels like you're really feeling and embodying this. On the emotional level, right, you could also be journaling. You can cry it out. You can watch something funny. I love watching animal videos. I can watch them all day. In
Yes.
the middle of the day, if I'm having a breakdown moment, nine out of 10 times right now, my current favorite is Poppy, this little marsupial. Hilarious. And it just, a 30-second video of Poppy saying, whoa, like totally just brings me back. It's amazing. Um,
Mm.
and then on the spiritual level, what connects you? So I run Reiki, I pray, these are one of my altars. I'm surrounded by different ways that help me to connect to my higher self. And doing these micro actions, again, each action could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I don't want to hear your excuses about how busy you are and all of these different things. It's not that it's invalid, it's just that it doesn't work because it just keeps you in your same loop. So we can stay in the same loop, or we can create a routine.
Right.
Create that routine in a way that's actionable, that is short. You can always grow that routine. I get so many people who say, well, I only have 5 minutes, so do 5 minutes. Then we meet again the next week. I say, well, how did your routine go, your 5-minute routine? Oh, well, actually, I felt so good. I gave myself 10 minutes, and it's amazing how much continuously this can help us. So it's not about taking away. This is about giving yourself back. Because as they say, life is for the living. And so you might as well live it.
I love it. I love everything that you share. You always give me goosebumps when you're talking. I think I want to touch a little bit on spirituality because I do have a lot of religious trauma. My mom was someone who almost she was almost going to be a nun before she got married. So, I mean, she's 93 now. So imagine back then she got married in her 30s, 32, which was not the norm, right? She was like past the age of marriage, so she ended up marrying my dad, whatever. Not to get into that whole subject. I'm going to start sharing some of that crazy life that I've had on this podcast, but anyway, my point is she and her family were super religious, and she had a brother and a sister who never got married, always went to church every day and everything else. And so as I was growing up in New York, anybody who knocked on our door to come talk to us about religion, my mom would be like, girls, come on, sit down. And she'd let them in, and we would have these conversations or, listen to whatever religious thing. And she would take us to church, and we were, part of all these different churches and stuff. And of course, when I mentioned earlier, I'm so transparent now that I never used to be. When I was molested, it was by someone who was very high up in this particular church, right? And I know other people who also experienced the same thing through the same guy. And I just felt like I just like kind of have a little bit of religious trauma, right? But having said that, I believe in God. I want to be a good person and all of that. But I also there's other ways to bring spirituality into your world. And I was listening to a scientist who was talking about the benefit of spirituality in your life in terms of mental health and so many other things. So I want to talk a little bit more about that because you have all these different modalities and things that you do and practices and stuff. For me, spirituality can be, and what it was is those routines, the meditation, sending love to the world, and also just appreciating. I happen to be very fortunate and live in an area where there's a lot of nature around me, and just acknowledging all the things. But talk to some of the people that probably can relate to everything that I said about religious trauma and all of that, and like what can they do to bring spirituality back into their lives, because it is important. And I'm very science based, and when I heard the scientists talk about it, I was like, whoa. I kind of knew that was the thing, but now I know.
Absolutely. It's something that is very, very common, unfortunately. And my hope is, of course, that it will decrease. I too have experienced elements of religious trauma. And what I have found is it's about reclaiming what spirituality or religion actually means for you. And what this does is this takes away this narrative of all of the things that I was forced into that had me feel trapped, that had me feel scared, that had me feel like I was a failure or wrong in this kind of way. And what it does is it empowers you once again to remember your connection to the divine that we all have. There's also a discernment that I want to make, which is a lot of what religion became, right, was surrounded around texts that essentially went through a game of telephone, right? A long, long, long time ago, whether people did or did not exist. And then these books were written with these stories with the intention of people, as you said, being good people. But these were misunderstood over time. And then it became a lot of you have to do this, as opposed to God loves you no matter what because you are of the image. And there was a lot of gender and all these other narratives that were placed on it. Spirituality, while I do feel that religion can fit within spirituality, I believe that spirituality is something that encompasses on a larger level. And it's not because something is wrong with religion per se. It's simply that with spirituality, if we take apart the word, we are looking at an actuality or a reality of spirit. So if you can acknowledge whether you are spiritual or religious or both, or even if you believe that none of this is true and it's purely about science, I always say that science is spiritual, spiritual is science, and this is getting proved more and more every day, which is that the reality is that we have a spirit of ourselves, right? We have an essence. It's something that is both tangible and intangible. It's something that we experience, as you said, when we go into nature, right? The majority of us will go into a beautiful natural environment and it feels peaceful and it feels somehow nurturing, right? We even talk about nature as mother, right? As a figure that we perceive to be nurturing. So, what it comes down to is really creating a new narrative for yourself. And that may be starting all over again. Maybe it's about stripping away. Maybe you feel most confident and comfortable going super far away from the religion that you were raised within and shown, and you go on sort of a little tour of learning about other ones, right? But I think that it's really about the spirit is of the self. It's everything that is our connection. So to be spiritual, to practice spirituality is simply having that desire of intimacy, that belonging within the self. And when we believe within the self and we belong within the self, then we form new beliefs and new attachments. As humans form attachments, that's part of what we do. It's in our nature, to what it is to be spiritual and to be connected. So the practices are whatever help you to feel connected, whatever help you to feel connected within yourself. Again, on that physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. There is no right or wrong. It's, are you harming yourself or are you harming others? If not, great, do whatever it is. As far as I'm concerned, there is no right or wrong. Everything is in the spectrum. And again, when we release that judgment, then, which for a lot of us was taught in religion, right, were these judgments, then we can actually see what is at the core, what is at the essence, again, that love. So how do you love yourself? How do you show yourself love? How do you feel about your connection to spirit, to other human beings? Right? There's a reason why when a baby is born, we talk about immediately having this contact, this physical contact. When we talk scientifically about releasing and connecting within our anxieties into nature, we talk about earthing. And we know scientifically that if we go and fly a plane across the world and we feel jet lagged and we go into the nature and we take off our shoes and we stand in the ground for 15 minutes and we breathe and connect, it actually helps us to ground. The word you were looking for earlier was circadian rhythm. And we connect within our circadian rhythm and we re regulate. Because there's nothing wrong with our system. We just have a supercomputer that we have the privilege to be grateful to living within, of the ultimate supercomputer, which is the spirit. So it's about giving yourself permission to explore. It's fun. And something that was taken away from us, for many of us, was that this is fun and this is about us and what is sacred and special and personal to who we are. And there is much more of the spirit and the science and the religion that are coming together. And I think this is shown, not to get super political, but this is shown in my perspective in the new Pope. I was very excited to see such a shift. I believe that we are on the precipice of something enormously special. This is a very special time to be alive right now. And right now we have the opportunity to change these narratives. And it takes time. And it takes moment to moment. And it's about ourselves and it's about each other. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's about having some patience with who we are and who we're choosing to become, and creating, as you said, one of my favorite words, alignment. And that's just another way of saying balance. Mm-hmm.
Jamie, you just brought this up and it's almost like you picked it out of my brain. I was going to move on to this subject of severe burnout when it comes to the political climate, because I will tell you that I don't know, a few years ago, I started on watching the news 24/7, like news after news after news. And then my husband and I were, because it tends to become like a household thing. And now we've decided we're avoiding the news, because you feel this sense of oh gosh, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like you're helpless, like you have no control over what's going on. There's nothing you can do, even if you vote or whatever. It's like it's not enough. And it's that has become a major burnout for so many people. And like, I don't even, I know you talked about all the different things that we can do. I guess the advice you would give people who are burnt out on politics, religion, politics, all of that is sort of all kind of meshed together. And as I was listening to you, I felt inspiration and like thinking, okay, something great's about to happen. Maybe the pendulum has swung so far to the shit show that it's going to have to come back. And maybe it won't go all the way to the other side and stay somewhere in the middle, because it doesn't seem like we ever have that middle ground. It's always like, you know. But what are your thoughts about what's going on in the world today? And I mean, it feels like it's worldwide. And the weather and all the disasters and the killing and all that stuff that I think really causes burnout for so many people, myself included, because I can't watch this stuff and have it be benign. It affects me. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it affects you because you love, right? You are a loving being. And especially for those who are empaths, those are highly sensitive people, it's really very common for us to get overwhelmed with what's happening politically. And I do believe that political burnout is a very important burnout that is widespread. And I do believe it's world spread. And I don't think it's new. I just think that as we've started to talk about burnout, we've unearthed all these different types of burnout, because there's not just one size fits all type of burnout. There's career burnout and caretaker burnout and political burnout and relational burnout and health burnout. There's all these different types of burnout. The political climate is absolutely exhausting. I burned out as well at the beginning of the pandemic times, because I also saw the social pandemic, and I have had the privilege and life experience of connecting with a lot of different people. And also, if you want to put me into boxes, I've got quite a few boxes myself. And attempting to learn about everything, support everything, figure out everything, watching all the news, it's just not possible to do this and to feel filled. You also just can't learn it. I mean, I being in the LGBTQ AI2S plus community for a long time, most of my life I've been coming out in one way or another. I don't have the bandwidth to read every article, to learn every single word. I don't think that's necessary for us to get to where we actually desire to go. I no longer watch the news. The first thing about this is when I tell people that I don't watch the news anymore, it's a very polarizing experience. People say, well, you're naive then. How do you know? How can you say that you care? How can you make decisions, this and the other? Well, here's the thing. What existed before the news was we talked to one another. We talked to one another. We communicated. It's amazing, right? How we've seen in our ancestors, people across the world, before they had the ability to know what each of them were thinking and doing, they were drawing the same symbols. They were talking about the same things. They were progressing and evolving. So we don't actually need the news, which has really become this media filter of the have tos and the pressures and the fear alarm system. We don't need that in order to actually get the news. We need to find out what's real. And that means being authentic and raw and vulnerable and sharing, actively listening, receiving, and communicating with people in your world. And again, this starts within yourself. The fear that's created within the global level, within politics, and within the news is allowing us to see what's happening worldwide. And then we think, well, we need to save everybody. I need to do this. I need to do that. How do I do this? And it's like, well, I bought this tomato and the tomato was at this farm and this person, but this farm is run by this person and actually paid by this person who did this thing. And it becomes this whole spiraling out. It's not sustainable. Now, look, I have a journalism degree. I don't believe that there's no use for journalism. I just believe, like anything else, these became extremes, and we don't actually exist predominantly in the extremes. And I do believe that we hit rock bottom, we go into the extremes of one way or the other in order for us to grow and expand and to realize what needs to come. I think what's happening is we're in an era where we are starting to find our balance. So if you want to balance yourself within this political climate, then balance how much you are consuming, because that's up to you how much you're doom scrolling on your phone. That's up to you as to who you're following and what accounts you're looking at and what shows you're watching and all of this. Now, look, I watched Game of Thrones and all sorts of things, but you know what? I've started to really think about what I am consuming is just as important as what I'm consuming here.
Yeah.
In my gut, right? And the second brain, as we know from science, is in the gut. So if we're going to focus on what it is that we're eating, then we need to focus as well on what we're seeing and what we're listening to. I now have been removing songs from my playlist where I'm listening to this and suddenly I'm like, well, what? This entire song is like hating on all people. It's just like fueling my anger. Now, anger is a super powerful and profound emotion. Emotions are warning systems. They're informing us of what our experiences are. So there's nothing wrong with being angry. Angry is very motivational. But if we take anger and we look at the news and we see, yeah, I should be angry about this thing because that's what they said is happening and I'm angry about it. Well, guess what? Putting more anger into the world did not solve that issue. In fact, anger is exhausting. And when we get burned out, when we get so angry, we get depressed, we get anxious, we overthink, and we feel it in the physical body because everything is kept score, as that book, The Body Keeps Score, in our bodies.
Yeah.
And so if we just keep leaning into this extreme of one way, then we are feeding into that. So we need to balance it. So maybe you spend 10 minutes watching the news. Maybe you only watch one news channel. Maybe you only consume one news source that you feel is unbiased through your research.
Yeah,
Maybe,
good luck with that.
yeah. I mean, maybe you unfollow some accounts, right? When I go onto social media, and I've been taking a huge break from social media to focus in very specific ways. When I do this and I go on a social media platform, well, now I only go to communicate with those who I'm communicating with. I go to look at very specific pieces of information. I'll only consume reels, for example, that someone specifically sends to me who I know that we line and vibe, I just don't spend all this time. It doesn't help. I can't be my best self if I am doom scrolling.
Yeah.
In order to be my best self, I need to be balanced. So find your balance for you.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing social media into that, because that the politics, the news, and good luck finding something that's factual, and that, because that's the other thing, is like you're just being fed based on an algorithm, so it's not, you don't have the agency you think you have in that, in if you go by what is being served up to you. So really being intentional about what you're doing and what you're seeing. I love it. I mean, you are as incredible and as amazing as I thought you would be. I was so happy to have you on this show, Jamie. We definitely need to bring you back every so often to get people back into alignment and homeostasis. I am so grateful for you coming on and being such a grounding and an expansive presence. You are just amazing. So I mean, this conversation, talking about self-love, and also your audit that we did, has really helped me to make connections. I'm gonna, after this, and this is kind of what happens with a lot of people who come on this show, because you're giving me what I need. And I know that a lot of people are out there similar to me that are also absorbing and hearing something they really, really need. So, for anyone who's listening who sees themselves in my story, I hope that this has inspired you to slow down, feel deeply, and remember that you don't have to hold it all in. And I highly recommend that you reach out to Jamie, and even just that initial consultation that we did together, that full exercise that was a full hour, was incredible. And yes, I was one of the people who cried. And I'm sure that you will too. But that is such a beautiful release of any tension and things that are in your body, that, when you have that disconnect, all of a sudden the body's like, yeah, I'm going to cry. You can't hold it in. Sorry. Jamie, thank you so much for everything that you do, and how well you do it. I really appreciate you. And of course, we're going to share all your information in the contacts so that people can get a hold of you, because there are so many people right now that are in this burnout pattern, and they need to do something about it. Sometimes you can't figure that out on your own. You need an expert to help you out. And so thank you.
It's my absolute pleasure and privilege. Truly, I've gone through everything in my life so that I can make it easier for other people. And especially for matchmakers, your whole journey is love, and you are supporting more love for people and within this world. And so you deserve that love for yourself. I'd be honored to come back anytime, and know that that audit that Arlene is talking about is free, no strings attached. So if you want to have that clarity, I promise you that hour is going to blow your mind, and you can't unsee what happens within that time. You will have the awareness you need to know on what is strong within you, what can be supported, and know that there are people who want to support you, and I'm one of them. So thank you so much, Arlene. This was so fun, and I'm really excited to support whoever comes my way.
Thank you. I'm super grateful as well. And for those of you who enjoyed the episode, please follow us on all of the platforms. We're on LinkedIn, we're on social media, and we're also on all of the. I have like a weird brain disconnect since my accident, that I'm forgetting words. And I'll tell you about my crazy accident. But anyway, guys, please follow us, because that's how we grow this platform and bring more amazing people like Jamie to come speak to us. And I think that there's a lot that, we can talk about on this podcast. So we need more and more people like Jamie to come on. And so give us a follow. We need that following. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have you ever felt called to help others find love? You might have the heart for matchmaking, but without the right training, turning that passion into a thriving business can feel impossible. Most matchmaking courses give you outdated theories and a certificate, but no real world strategy to build a successful business. That's where Love Pro Mastermind Academy is different. Our live Done With You training goes beyond theory, helping you develop matchmaking expertise, implement sales and marketing strategies, and master the art of client success. With expert-led instruction, accountability, and a community of like-minded professionals, you'll learn how to identify your niche, attract high-quality clients, create a seamless matchmaking process, grow a sustainable, profitable business. With over a decade of experience, we don't just train matchmakers, we create leaders in the industry. Are you ready to become an LPMA certified matchmaker and build a business that changes lives? Apply today at lovepromastermind.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow matchmakers and friends. For more resources, training, and inspiration, visit lovepromastermind.com and follow us on social media. Remember, matchmaking isn't just a career, it's a calling. Let's keep building connections, changing lives, and growing together. Until next time, stay inspired and keep matching.